So why do we think, these things matter, right? In terms of like this trust, this authority, this kind of like fairness aspect, right? So if we imagine this from a like police civilian encounter, right? We're using police blue here, and for this person, right, this can happen, right? As this officer comes in, right, there are, depending on what the interaction is, right? I might come in and I have a lot of actions and pathways I can make in my decision, right? So for this example, let's say that there is a traffic stop, right, in some ways, right? So this person's not in a car, but pretend they are. So when they're in this like vehicle, right? One, there's the action, right, that you were actually stopped, right? That's nested in this encounter. And depending on you as a driver, right, you might think this is for a legitimate reason. Maybe you knew you were speeding. Maybe you did do a California roll at the stoplight. Or maybe you don't understand why, right? Or maybe it's a question of like there are other people speeding and there are absolutely other people doing California roll stops. So why am I being stopped, right? So the other aspect, right, it's coming in, right, is that within this encounter, an officer makes a decision based off of, like their demeanor and what they're going to say, how they approach it. Are they friendly? Are they approachable? Are they issuing an order, something they may ask for your ID, your insurance, registration, whatever. And then, at this point, if they're checking your ID, which they're always going to do, right? Or usually they will anyway, right? You do have options available in terms of like how you want to the outcome, or escalation to go, right? And so what I mean by that, right, is that there are going to be cases when you can choose to give a warning. Maybe you would get a ticket, or maybe you're the type of person, right, that wants to, pull someone out the car, right? So remove from the vehicle. Or, you can also, maybe like search them, and things like that, right? And so this is like an interesting like escalation, right? And depending on how things are escalated in this, you can have situations where people have like an increase of like the search, right? Maybe it leads to like an arrest of some kind, right? Because maybe there's contraband found, or maybe it's not found, right? Or maybe there's an issue to like to use force, right? Or the length of the stop, right? When we think about these different decision points, right? There's a lot of questions that come up to this, right? And each of them, like as a civilian, are going to be like irritating, frustrating, and hard to understand, right? And so why do we care about like having police compliance, right? Or excuse me, police legitimacy, right? If I have like these actions that are in place, right? There are some things that I can get by having this, right? One, outside of having, like this, legitimacy aspect, right, which is good in and of itself, I'm more likely to have an increase in trust, right? So if people think that I have good motives or that I have a good reason for doing that, right, then that's probably like, pretty useful for me, right? If I also have like this increase in legitimacy, right, I can also probably have a better chance of having good community relations with the public. And if people are more likely to trust me, they think I'm making fair decisions, right? They have confidence that, what I'm doing is like for good reason. I'm more likely to get people to comply with me. And the compliance part is key, right? Because if people aren't complying with like an order or directive, right, an officer can choose to let them not comply, right? Or in some situations, right, they may have to choose to use force in order to get what they want, right? So if there's higher like police legitimacy, then there's going to be a better chance of having compliance through like a soft compliance, right? So I don't have to use my hands or weapons to do that, but people are more likely to comply, because I gave them an order to do so. That really reduces like the risk of violence, right? If I have, you know, police legitimacy, right, I'm also going to get more support for police. And I'm more likely to, defer um, to defer to the police in interactions in terms of like what their orders are, right? And again, this is about having confidence in police are doing something correctly, if they're more likely to comply, and this makes both like law enforcement and civilian life easier. So if I think back to this traffic stop, right? If I have, probably like high police legitimacy, I'm going to make these judgments here, right? Based on if it is, right? And how the officer treated me, right? And I'm certainly going to make judgments about the outcomes or how things are escalated from this warning or ticket, like if I deserved it, if I didn't, how they explain things to me, right? But if I get to a point where maybe I start questioning, the legitimacy of, the officer's actions, right? And that can happen for all kinds of things, right? One, why are you moving from the vehicle? Why are you stopping and searching me? Right? You start asking questions about this, and this can lead, to maybe some like hostility from a civilian perspective, right? And that might further escalate if you don't understand why, like you're being pulled out or why you're being arrested or, depending if you're detained for a long time, right? You're gonna have a lot of questions here. And so if you don't have like a lot of faith in police or you have a lot of questions about what they're doing is the right thing, if it's dangerous or not, right, you're more likely to have less compliance and less trust of police. And this can to a huge escalate lead to the escalation of the encounter because people are responding to one another. So it's a critical issue here to make that happen.